To urge the preparation of defence is not to insert the imminence of war. On the contrary, if war was imminent, preparations for defence would be too late. I believe we must do more to defend our country, our interests and our values. So today I'm announcing the biggest strengthening of our national defence for a generation. We will increase defence spending to a new baseline of 2.5% of GDP by 2030.
That announcement comes as Rishi Sunak warned President Putin will not stop at the Polish border if his assault on Ukraine is allowed to continue. Earlier, Britain pledged its largest ever package of aid for Kyiv, worth £500 million. During the Warsaw trip, the PM is holding talks with the leaders of Poland, Germany and NATO, warning that the defence of Ukraine is essential to our joint security. Well, Ukraine's President Zelensky has welcomed the package, which includes long-range missiles, armoured vehicles and boats. On the day that 5 Channel migrants died off the French coast, including a 4-year-old child, GBNews can reveal that more than 250 others have crossed to the UK. A small boat got into difficulties off Wimereux Beach near Boulogne before 2 a.m. A number of other migrants were rescued, with at least one now critically ill in hospital. 5 other small boats have now been received by Border Force and the Dover lifeboat, with migrants transported to the processing centre in Dover Harbour. A further 2 boats were seen heading towards UK waters. Police were faced with violence at a St George's Day event in Whitehall this afternoon when a group tried to force its way through a cordon. Mounted officers on horses needed to intervene when the group broke through a police barrier. The force earlier said that it expected some, quote, far-right groups and groups linked to football clubs to attend the event. Police say 6 people have been arrested. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code. It's on your screen right now, or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Ben.
A very good evening to you and happy St George's Day. So the celebrations seen across England today have been more emphatic than I can ever remember. And this tweet this morning from the Mail on Sunday's Dan Hodges caught my eye. Dan said, genuine question, how many of us have actually ever done anything significant to celebrate St George's Day? Maybe we should indeed celebrate it more, but I can't honestly say I've ever done anything for it. Well, that got me thinking because, I'll be honest, I've never given St George's Day more than, I guess, a nod in the past, and I reckon lots of others are in the same boat. But something's changed this year. I think it's finally clicked that no longer should we be embarrassed about English patriotism like it's some sort of dirty little secret. And I reckon the catalyst for that has been the mission creep over the years to strip this country of all its identity. Uncontrolled mass migration, the blatant agenda to bring down the royal family, institutional embarrassment over our colonial past, or quite simply just insane suggestions that Sir Winston Churchill was worse than Hitler. And let's not forget a generation of self-loathing youngsters who have been indoctrinated to hate themselves and the nation at the altar of historic guilt. We've been coerced to forget our greatness. The Industrial Revolution, our towering cathedrals, William Shakespeare, Magna Carta, fish and chips, and the insistence that we mustn't grumble. There are forces who want to muddy our history and scupper our future because they hate everything we're about. But after years of attacks, the pendulum is finally swinging the other way. Never before has the phrase "use it or lose it" been so apt. And celebrating our country with pride, much like the Americans do, but without the embarrassment, should now be an annual event marked with a bank holiday. As the great man once said, there is a forgotten, nay, almost forbidden word, which means more to me than any other. That word is England. But let's get the thoughts of my panel tonight. I'm joined by social commentator Esther Krakow, Conservative MP for Romford, Andrew Rosendale, and author and broadcaster Amy Nicole Turner. Here we go. This is like my nightly bit of exercise, isn't it, doing that walk?
Really didn't make it then.
Evening to you all. Thanks for joining me. Amy, let's start with you. A national bank holiday for St George's Day. The Scots do it, why can't we?
Well, yeah, I would be insane to turn down the opportunity of a free bank holiday, wouldn't I? And I actually think a bank holiday would be just the thing to get us a bit more interested in St George's Day.
So you support it?
Yeah, well, a free holiday, of course I do.
Just for the fact it's a free holiday? I mean, it's a bit of a lame reason.
Well, sorry. No, it would definitely do well to increase my patriotism. OK. All
right, Andrew Rosendale, I've just clocked your red socks, your red tie, and, of course, your red rose. in full swing tonight. I said that was a Labour reference, that Rose, but I was just having a bit of a dig at you. A bank holiday for St George's Day, yes or no?
Absolutely. I've campaigned for it for 2 decades, ever since I've been an MP. It's absolutely wrong that we celebrate St Patrick's Day. The Irish have amazing celebrations. In Scotland, it's a bank holiday for St Andrew's Day. Every country I go to around the world, they have fantastic celebrations for their national identity, their culture, their heritage. But in England, it's all dumbed down. Well, that needs to change.
Right, so you've campaigned for 2 decades, right? Why has it not happened? Why are we so ashamed about the St George's flag, St George's Day? What is it? Why can the Welsh and the Irish and the Scots all take great pride in their flag and their country, but when it comes to the English, we're so ashamed? Why is that?
I don't know, and I think it's appalling, and I think we need to change something to make it happen. Now, I've tried for many years under both governments. David Cameron, he considered it. Tony Blair, I put it to him. But nobody has grasped it. Now, the argument is that it's another bank holiday, which means another day off, and the economy can't take it. So I've suggested that you combine May Day and St George's Day and have one bank holiday, but brand it St George's Day, because that means something to the English people.
It's interesting that you said Cameron didn't consider it or swerved there. I mean, how far down the line did you get?
Well, look, every time they look at it and every time they say it's going to cost the economy a lot of money to have another day off. So that's why I'm suggesting have one bank holiday for St George's Day. You don't really need May Day because nobody really celebrates that particularly. It's just it's a non-day. So let's make it St George's Day instead. OK, good shout. Esther Krakow, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yay or nay for a bank holiday, St George's Day?
Nay.
Nay.
I actually think if your patriotism is bought by a single bank holiday, then it's very cheaply bought. And on the cost of a bank holiday, I hate to be that person. It costs the economy £2.9 billion a bank holiday. At the end of the day, I think symbols of patriotism don't necessarily have to be a flag. So the Americans basically worship their flag. But we in England...
What's wrong with that?
Well, no, it's fine. It's a bit odd, I find. The kinds of patriotism strange. I mean, I went to Universal Studios, and, you know, they have that giant ball with, like, the flags of the world. Yeah. And there was always a group of people that would stand by and wait for the American flag to be like, USA, USA, and, like, there are hundreds
But
of
I love that. Why can't we be like the Americans?
Because they're a bit strange in that regard. It's true. But I do think there are other symbols of patriotism, like the royal family. We tend to revere more institutions than something like a flag. And I think that's just English culture, and I think we should accept it. I don't think we should, you know, try and bribe people with a bank holiday to become more patriotic about St George's Day.
Have you noticed that this year has been more emphatic than previous years? And also, Andrew, do you agree with me that it's because it's a reaction, I guess, to the feeling that, you know, slowly our identity, our culture is being eroded away? Do you see that response today?
I do, and in my constituency in Romford, we had big celebrations on Saturday. I've gone all around the constituency. Everybody wants to celebrate St George's Day. Can I just say that by not having these symbols, by not making a special day, by not celebrating it and flying the flag, do you know what we're doing? We're creating a vacuum. Something else could take its place. I think patriotism is a good thing. It brings people together. It means that everyone can be united, loving their country, cherishing their traditions and the English way of life. If we don't do it, if we don't make it something special, then something else could come, which is something more sinister.
We do have symbols. It just doesn't happen to be a flag. We're a country that reveres more institutions than flags. It's just the way that British people are.
Do you think the Scots are weirdos for, you know,
no, but the Scots
flag?
are not like Americans, and they have a completely different culture. I'm pretty sure, like, drinking is a national.
But the thing is, I think if the country was doing well and we felt like we had something to celebrate, we would be inclined to feel more patriotic.
You see, that's another thing that I have an issue with, because your patriotism cannot be linked to basically the decisions of politicians. I think that's not the that's not the definition of patriotism.
The opposite.
Well, exactly.
The opposite. I'm not saying that.
You should be proud of the country, your values, and what brings you together outside of Westminster politicians. And that's a very fair point. But I don't think we should reduce it to, oh, we're not patriotic about St George's Day.
But loving your country,
look at what we are patriotic about,
celebrating your traditions is about our history. It's about what we've done over many centuries. It's about what our forebears did to fight for our freedom, democracy, rule of law, and all the wonderful things that we've done over the centuries. This isn't just about today, it's about hundreds of years, thousands of years of English history.
And
That's
actually,
what it's about.
Esther, I disagree with that, because in recent years, I'd say the past, Andrew, no offence to your party, I mean, over the past 14 years, things have gone downhill pretty rapidly because there's no Conservatives there. But in recent years...
I'm here.
People, you probably, as Liz Truss would say, the only Conservative left in the room, or a few of them anyway. In recent years, a lot of people in this country feel like there has been an attack, a mission creep, as I described it, on the very fabric of England's identity, at least. Attacks on the royal family to abolish the monarchy, even trying to get the Grand National and great iconic events like that shut down. So I disagree where you say that it shouldn't be about... patriotism shouldn't be about politics, because in actual fact, I think a lot of people have become so disillusioned with the country in recent years that now we're finally realising we have a great country here. We are iconic, we're historic, we're full of very brave and courageous and innovative people, and it's time now we, as I said in my thoughts at the top of the show, use it or lose it before we lose all sense of identity completely.
I do agree with you, but I think you want to elevate institutions or symbols of patriotism that you already have. You just said, you know, you weren't always a big celebrator of St. George's Day. I guess most people are not. So what's the point of elevating something that's not as big of a deal as entrenched in English culture? But you have, you know, the royal family, Grand National, horse racing, and all these other institutions that are very important to what it means to be British and English.
Okay.
Do you know
why don't you elevate those?
A brilliant example of patriotism, I think, was the opening ceremony at the Olympics in 2012. We all loved that. We got behind that, and that was a celebration.
Yeah, what a great year.
Yeah.
Can I just very, very quickly, I don't know if we've got the pictures, show these pictures from the celebrations in London today, where the police scuffled with people who were celebrating. There was a couple of arrests for being drunk and disorderly. Why haven't we seen the same authoritarian approach by the police? They're all dressed in riot gear and batons and down there in meat wagons to people out and about just celebrating St George's Day. Why don't we see that on the pro-Palestine marches week after week, where they're carrying Nazi placards and everything else? It's a two-tier policing system we've got.
It's a one-tier police. It's just policing, and they extended the boundary that was agreed with the police. The pro-Palestine marches don't do that.
They were just
also the volume. I mean, pro-Palestine marches, just on a technicality, there are about 20 to 30,000 people that descend onto London.
Well, even more so. This
is about a few hundred people.
It looks like there's a couple hundred people there trying to walk down the street. The police, from what I can see, are intentionally stopping them from walking down the street and causing... The police from these pictures, look like they're up for a scuffle.
Because the organisers said, we will end the march at this point and then go backwards, and they extended through, and that's why the police
I find it amazing. People have been arrested for being drunk and disorderly, yet people can go down Whitehall screaming for Intifada, River to the Sea, carrying swastikas, and they don't get nicked.
This actually proves the point. Because we don't make it a proper National Day of celebration, you finish up having people doing independent marches and protests and their own things. Other countries make it a national celebration. They celebrate it in schools. They celebrate it... Businesses celebrate it.
Yeah.
Organisations celebrate it. And the people cherish their identity. If you don't cherish your identity, you lose it. And so we need to do more than we're doing. Otherwise, this kind of thing is going to happen even more.
But I think that shows that it needs reclaiming, doesn't it? Because the people that were celebrating there, that was far-right groups, that was football.
Was it? They seemed like a bunch of old pensioners to me. I don't know.
When we watched the extended footage from that, it isn't a great flying of the flag, and that just leans into the stereotypes. Okie
dokie, let's move on. It's, of course, the final week to see how your next holiday could be on us, with your chance to win a Greek cruise for two, £10,000 in cash and luxury travel gifts. It's a prize worth over 20 grand, and it could be yours. Don't miss out. Here's all the details you need.
It's the final week to see how you could win our biggest prize yet. There's an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. Plus, courtesy of Variety Cruises, a bespoke 7-night small boat cruise for two worth £10,000. With flights, meals, excursions and drinks included, your next holiday could be on us. Choose any one of their 2025 Greek adventures and find your home at sea. We'll also send you packing with these luxury travel gifts. Hurry, as lines close on Friday. For another chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Andrew Rosendale was watching that promo quite intently. I think he's going to be entering because he said he needs a holiday. But anyway, still to come, NatWest lawyers will be quaking their boots as Brexit baron himself, Nigel Farage, accuses them of covering up his debanking scandal last year. Nigel's here to explain why he's not letting this one go. But up next, talent manager Jonathan Shalit goes head-to-head with former UKIP leader Henry Bolton, asking if the BBC, and I think they should, make the findings of their Huw Edwards investigation public. This is Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Squatters in London have taken over a pub which is leased by Gordon Ramsay, no less. The pub is currently up for sale with a guide price of £30 million. It is understood that Kitchen Nightmares host Ramsay called the police on Wednesday but was unable to have the squatters removed. The Metropolitan Police said in a statement they were made aware of squatters at a disused property but added, "This is a civil matter," and so police did not attend the property. Let's see what my panel make of this. Why can't we just boot squatters out? If we own a property or lease a property, why don't we just boot them out?
I know that's tempting, but the fact is, long-term empty properties have increased by 24% in the last 6 years. There's 1.2 million people on the social housing lists. People don't have a place to live.
What it does highlight is the enormous disparity in fairness in property laws in this country. It's just not fair that if you've worked all your life and invested some money in property because, you know, interest rates at zero and there's nowhere else to invest your money, and then suddenly somebody who's got no claim to that property and doesn't seem to have earned very much in life takes over your property. It's an outrage.
People shouldn't be squatting in other people's homes or commercial properties. But the fact is, until we sort the housing problem in this country, none of this is going to go away. The fact is, people my age won't be able to buy a home unless they've got a bung from their parents.
Yeah, but what's the practicality of this demonstration?
It's not a demonstration.
It's not going to free up more housing for people who are on the streets.
No, of course not. It's people looking to find a place to live. I don't think it's a demonstration at all.
It's an anti-wealth, anti-property-owning demonstration by people who've got nothing better to do in life than break into other people's property.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News. Coming up, Nigel Farage's debanking scandal latest and his thoughts on Trump and Rwanda. But first, should the BBC share their investigation into Huw Edwards with the public? It's time for tonight's head-to-head. The BBC's star newsreader announced his resignation from the broadcaster yesterday, 9 months after he was suspended following allegations that he paid an unnamed person thousands of pounds for explicit pictures. The parents of the person in question have now spoken to The Sun this morning, saying, "This isn't the end for us. We've been suffering immensely for nearly a year. We still have so many questions and need the BBC to answer them." However, reports in today's newspapers suggest that the internal BBC investigation into Huw Edwards has been shared with the star himself, but the outcome is unlikely to be made public. The BBC also told us yesterday that they will not comment on internal processes, despite the investigation and Huw Edwards' £430,000 a year salary being funded by you and me, the licence fee payer. So tonight, I'm asking, as the devastated parents of the person involved in the Huw Edwards scandal say they fear the episode will be swept under the rug should the BBC make its investigation public. Let me know your thoughts by heading to gbnews.com/yoursay or tweet me at GBNews, and whilst you're there voting our poll, the results will come very, very shortly. But first, going head-to-head on this are PR expert and talent manager Jonathan Shalit and former UKIP leader Henry Bolson. Good evening to you both. Henry, does the Beeb need to be more transparent about this Huw Edwards affair and get this investigation into the public domain?
I think, Tom, yes, Ben, sorry. I don't know what. The answer is yes. Not the investigation, not the details of the evidence, not the submissions that have been made by various people, but the findings, yes. Because the BBC has a responsibility as the national news or broadcaster, if you like, funded by from the public themselves, has a responsibility to demonstrate not only that they have integrity, which is already obviously highly questionable, but that they are doing everything they can to maintain it. In this particular case, I'm afraid it feels as though they are looking after Huw Edwards, and it has to be said that the police investigation found no criminal action at all had taken place. No criminal offences had taken place, and it's destroyed Huw's career. It's obviously caused personal problems for all sorts of other people. We don't really know exactly who, but the answer is yes. The findings should be made public because this is an organisation that survives, that exists because of public confidence within it, and because it is funded by the public, and the public have every right to know that a star presenter of that organisation has, when allegations are made, is going to be submitted to a proper investigation, and the findings are going to be robust.
All right. Jonathan, of course, no criminality has been found by the police. 2 police forces investigated it, the Met and the Welsh Police, but there were complaints from junior staff members at the BBC about Huw Edwards, on top of the allegations that he paid £35,000 for explicit pictures from a person.
Individuals, just because they work for public organisations, are also entitled to privacy. What I think is key here, from what we know, and of course from what we all know externally, is, as Henry just said, the police investigated, following what The Sun wrote. The police found no criminal suggestion to take any further, so that's very clear, no criminality. What also seems very clear, it all took place in the privacy of Huw's home. It took place on his own personal equipment in his own personal time. I don't think it can be expected that if an employee of an organisation, publicly taxpayer funded or not, has activities in their own private time within the law, that it's not for the employer to be publicising inquiries into them. If this had taken place on BBC property or with BBC equipment, that'd be a whole different conversation. But this is his private time on private equipment in his private home. So I don't see why.
Well, Jonathan,
made public.
Huw Edwards has been off before resigning yesterday. He was off for 9 months, getting paid 35 grand a month still. He was signed off sick. And the investigation that the BBC have carried out was funded by licence fee payers. So do you not agree there should be an element of transparency on that front?
So I think the BBC have been transparent in saying what they've done. People don't like them. People don't like what they've done. But the Director General of the BBC also has a responsibility to the employees of the BBC. If Huw Edwards is off on medical grounds for a long period of time, that also has to be respected. I mean, people have a right to be protected as well. And he's become very unwell, as it appears, on medical grounds. And it's not for us to question that. We're not doctors. If people have worked for an organisation for a long time, there are very clear laws in this country that you are kept on salaries and you are protected and looked after your employer. I don't think the question is about the BBC investigation. It's a bigger issue of how companies treat employees, and employees are entitled to privacy. It still remains Huw Edwards did not break the law, and the police haven't charged him or investigated him. So it took place in his own home. It's like you. If you got up to mischief, Leo.
Not me, Jonathan. I said last night, I'm vanilla. No skeletons in my closet. Bring it on.
Let's say someone else at GB News gets up to indiscretion in the privacy of their own home, away from the office. It's not the business of GB News.
Yeah, but Jonathan, we're not funded by the licence fee payers. GB News is a private company. We're not funded by. I've seen this argument online. We are not. The BBC are funded millions and millions and millions of pounds. Huw Edwards was on £430,000 a year. Yes, no criminality. Fine. It's a question of morals, though. Henry Bolton.
Yeah, look, I agree. I hate witch hunts. I despise them. There are so many cases of politicians, particularly, but also some celebrities who have been pursued and whose private lives have been ripped apart by the media, by organisations, including the BBC. And, so I despise that sort of behaviour. But the BBC must tread a very difficult path. It has its own integrity to think of. It has the integrity of an organisation, or it needs to look after the integrity of an organisation that is funded from the public purse and has a reputation to uphold. It is already failing to do that. I'm not saying that they should divulge all sorts of personal details.
No.
But they do have a responsibility to tell the British people who fund them whether or not one of their star presenters has actually committed something that they feel is such a misdemeanour that he needs to resign or be sacked. Mm-hmm. And I think that is the least that can be done. It's the rest of it, in a sense, is mistakes and errors and tragedy, nothing illegal.
Okay.
And lives have been wrecked. But there is an integrity issue that's broader than just Huw.
Okay.
And he should have recognised that as well.
Fascinating debate, Jonathan Shalit. Great points. I just think at the very least we should know about the complaints made by the BBC staff against Huw Edwards. I mean, that's a good enough reason to make some of the investigation public. Henry Bolton, Jonathan Shalit, thank you very much for your contributions. So, what have you been saying online? John on X says the public is forced to pay his wages. Oh, well, they were anyway before he resigned. So we should see the investigation. Janice on X says the man's been hospitalised because of his mental health. He should be left alone. And Colin on X says, why should they? The police investigation was completed. He had no case to answer. What more do you want? And your verdict is now in. 81% of you agree the BBC should make its investigation into Huw Edwards public, while 19% of you say they should keep it under wraps. Coming up, as Harry and Meghan hire a new PR team with the Brits at the helm of European operations, are they trying to rebuild relationships with Britain? Editor-at-large of the Mail on Sunday, Charlotte Griffiths, joins me for the Royal Dispatch. But first, Nigel Farage's debanking scandal row rumbles on. But who's in his sights this time? He reveals all next. This is Patrick Christys tonight, only on GB News with me, Ben Leo.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. It will stay dry, but it will be quite a cold night tonight. And throughout tomorrow, the best of the sunshine will be across north and western areas once again. That's because high pressure is dominating over here. Meanwhile, to the east of the UK, we've got low pressure and this weather front. That's brought cloudier skies throughout this afternoon to the southeast. That should clear away overnight, though, and we'll be left with this northerly wind. That will bring a cold feel to coastal areas through Wednesday, but also a few showers overnight tonight. Should be fairly light and mainly just restrict coastal areas. Further north and west, though, clear and dry and quite cold by tomorrow. We could be down as low as -3 or 4 for some Scottish glens, but the frost should be fairly patchy and should melt away fairly quickly as well. Then we'll be left with a dry and bright day for many western areas of the UK. In the east, though, with this northerly wind, that's always going to drag in a bit more in the way of cloud, and that risk of showers will continue into Wednesday afternoon. We'll feel a little bit brighter, though, than today, as the cloud will be a bit higher, and in the best of the sunshine, could see highs of 15 or 16 degrees. Another cold night to come on Wednesday night, so a cold start on Thursday, and then this area of low pressure in the North Sea will bring this band of rain and cloud across northern areas of England, southern Scotland through Thursday. It should be drier and brighter in the south, but then Friday and Saturday look that much more unsettled. However, notice temperatures will start to rise by Saturday.
Dubes & Co. Weekdays from 6 p.m.
You think this country needs new gas power stations? Apparently, this will all be about trying to get some form of energy security. Rishi Sunak has upset people today with this suggestion, people saying that actually this would do more damage to climate change than it would do good. Where are you on it, Richard?
I'll tell you exactly where we need a lot more gas power stations and nuclear power stations, because quite often the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine. Last week, we imported 16% of all our electricity because we haven't got enough capacity in the UK, and we're now totally over-reliant on renewables.
The part of the problem is the lack of storage capacity, which the government has finally got round to addressing. I think this as backup is actually quite a sensible idea. But they are not doing anything, as far as I can tell. At the moment, it will be retrofitted to have storage capability, which seems to be utterly bonkers. I mean, anyone who's got solar panels, you know very well you're storing up energy. So it's about storage as much as production. They could have gone, 20 years ago, we could have had nuclear power. We could have done more. We haven't looked far enough ahead in the future, and we are in grave danger of making the same mistake. I mean, the other side of this is, what is the difference going to be? Blackouts are, they're irritating and...
Irritating? It'd be disastrous. It would destroy our economy.
Well, they would be now, but, some of us remember 3-day weeks and things like that. And in fact, I grew up thinking that everybody had, at least a couple of days a week when they had to eat off a primus stove and things.
This is, again, I don't want to harp on, but this is one of the problems in the politics in our country, isn't it? So many politicians, they just think in election cycles. Absolutely. They just think, what can I do and say to get my own backside re-elected at the next general election? They're not always looking ahead at, actually, politics aside, what is genuinely the best thing for this country?
Patrick, Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News. Still to come, does Harry and Meghan's latest PR hire indicate a desire to build bridges with Britain? The Mail on Sunday's editor-at-large, Charlotte Griffiths, reveals all. But first, on St George's Day, we welcome the ultimate patriot. It's Nigel Farage. And Nigel's debanking scandal is still rumbling on, with the Brexit baron accusing NatWest lawyers of a lack of transparency after his bank account was closed for political reasons last year. Nigel, of course, has made a subject access request to law firm Travers Smith to reveal all the information they held on him, but was told, and I can't believe this, they cannot disclose the details because of, quote, legal privilege. He told the Daily Telegraph, the cover-up continues. You have to ask why. Travers Smith do not want a record of documents relating to the investigation to be made public. Given the public still own a large share in the bank, we have a right to know. What are they trying to hide? Evening, Nigel. What are they trying to hide? Tell us.
Good evening. Well, because today was the NatWest AGM, and their new chairman, Rick Haythornthwaite, said that 2023 had led to some unforeseen circumstances. You bet your life it did. So here's the form. They are about to do a public offering of shares to encourage the great to buy shares in that bank that we bailed out, a bank, by the way, that has now cost the taxpayer over £40 billion. And they want to do it against the background of their absolute dishonesty. They debanked me, they lied about it. I got the subject access request that proved the reasons why they did it. They then decided to try and cover it up through a city law firm called Travers Smith, by the way, whose emeritus chairman described Brexiteers as racists and xenophobes. I mean, how neutral is that? And when I then asked them for a subject access request, all I get is 139 pages of press cuttings, no personal information about what was said between NatWest and them about me, because they're claiming legal privilege. This was not a legal inquiry. They were brought in to examine the reasons for the decision. The cover-up continues. NatWest could, at the stroke of a pen, say to Travers Smith, please give him the information that he's legally entitled to. So the fight goes on. And what I'm saying is this bank is not fit for selling shares to the great British public in an offering that they continue with this dishonest policy. And no wonder the share price is down the tubes since I went public. From the moment I spoke out to the bottom drop, the shares fell 36%. So I tell you what, NatWest, if you want another fight with Nigel Farage, I'm ready for you.
There we go. And look, Nigel, it does make you wonder what they are trying to hide, because when you submitted that subject access request to NatWest, you uncovered a trove of, quite frankly, vile and awful comments about you, calling you an awful human being. That, you know, I'm not going to go into them, but, you know, it just makes you wonder why they are being so secretive. By the way, I take it you didn't get an invite to their AGM today?
No. Sadly, it was in Edinburgh. Had it been in London, I might just have shown up, you know, and I wouldn't have been very popular or got past security, I don't think, though.
It would have made good telly. You should have taken a camera down there.
Yeah, look, the point is this, Ben, this is really important. The reason I came out as being debanked was because I knew it was happening to lots of other people. We've learned in the last 48 hours that complaints to the financial ombudsman about debanking are up by 44% last year. And that's just from corporate companies, let alone individuals. There is 1 million bank accounts have been closed in this country in the last 4 years. This is a major scandal. I went public, not just for me, but on behalf of so many other people. And if you haven't got a bank account in the modern world, it's like not having electricity or water coming into your house. Without a bank account, digital world, you literally cannot survive.
Yeah, figures from the Treasury Committee show that in the last financial year alone, there was a 44% spike in complaints to the Ombudsman about debanking. The question is, Nigel, when is NatWest going to pony up and pay you your compensation?
Well, they're not very keen to do that, you know, because if we were in America, I mean, I could make enough to, I mean, you know, I'd literally retire on what they'd have to pay me. I have incurred, throughout this process, massive legal costs of my own.
Yeah.
You know, I couldn't do this fight without dotting the I's and crossing the T's. And so I've had legal representation and help all the way through this. I hope I've uncovered the plight of many other people who've been unfairly debanked. I've got promises from government and from the Financial Conduct Authority that they will change the law and change the rules. Well, given the mess this government's in, you better hurry up, because Labour showed no sign of people being vaguely interested.
Also, Nigel, I've heard you talk in recent days about concerns with AML, anti-money laundering and KYC, Know Your Customer legislation, which apparently, I didn't know this, it's all European legislation.
It started in about 1990, when I was working in the city, in the commodities markets. A whole raft of new rules came in, and we sat down with a compliance officer. I said, where's this come from? Oh, well, this is what the regulator... No. Where's this come from? Oh, it's come from the European community. Really? How interesting. It was one of the beginnings of my Eurosceptic journey. And we've now masses of this stuff. And the problem is this. The banks are so scared, if they don't check what are considered to be unusual transactions, they could face massive fines. It's easier for the banks to simply close accounts than spend the time on due diligence. So there's a massive problem here. It's bad regulation. One of my prayers for Brexit was we'd have a government with a majority, which, by the way, I helped them get in 2019, that would re-examine this and go through it and simplify it. And do you know what the Conservative Party have done? Nothing.
OK, well, look, we approached the law firm Travers Smith today, but they, of course, refused to provide a comment. Nigel, let me briefly get your thoughts on Rishi's Rwanda plan. It got through Parliament last night. He's taking a victory lap. You think it's not going to work, of course. 5 people tragically died overnight. I mean, what's going to happen with it, ultimately? Well,
I mean, this piece of law says that judges can just ignore the Human Rights Act 1998. I don't see constitutionally how that works, particularly given how the Supreme Court has ruled already. I suspect that when it comes to sending flights, you will see the biggest, most protracted legal battle in our lifetimes. And because Rishi has upped the ante, you know, no foreign court will tell us what we can do in our country and all this sort of thing, as if he's going to ignore the ECHR. He's got that to contend with. He's got the Human Rights Act to contend with. He's got a Supreme Court with precedent to contend with. And for all these reasons, Ben, I believe now, I didn't yesterday morning, but I now believe the general election will come in late June or early July. He has to have the election out of the way before this policy completely fails. And even if it worked, and we sent 200 people to Rwanda in the first month, what use is that if they're arriving 500 a day? It isn't going to work. It's a catastrophe. Above all people, I was the one that exposed the small boats crisis 4 years ago. I went out into the channel. I predicted vast numbers would come. They're reacting to me in many, many ways. We've got a summer election coming. Be in no doubt.
Yeah, Nigel, you were out in the channel before GB News even existed, so props to you. Yes. But look, why can't we do what the Aussies did, Tony Abbott in the mid-2000s, and turn the boats back? And by the way, that doesn't involve just attaching some ragtag rope to a dinghy and towing them back. They put migrants into very safe lifeboat-style vessels, sent them back to offshore processing sites or to wherever they came from. Richard Tice thinks we can do it under, I think, he's not said it specifically, but I think it's the UN Convention of Law of the Seas, Article 25, about innocent passage. You think we still would have a problem with the ECHR doing that?
Yeah, I mean, look, you know, I had Alexander Downer on the show this evening, the former Foreign Minister of Australia, the former ambassador, indeed, to this country, and somebody who's helped the British government. But the point is this. Australia were genuinely sovereign. They weren't encumbered by this completely outdated, three-quarters of a century old European Convention on Human Rights. And that complicates things in the most extraordinary way. And the one thing the government of this country will never do is go against what the courts, especially the Supreme Court, decide. So Australia were freer to do what they did. Now, they still met with international condemnation. You know, the EU condemned them, we condemned them, the United Nations condemned them. They just blooming did it. And after a fortnight of doing it, that's how you destroy the traffickers' model of taking money from those that want to come. This isn't going to work. It's going to be an absolute legal mess of catastrophic proportions. And if Sunak stays beyond 10 to 12 weeks from now, and there's not a general election, they will be literally sunk below the waterline. He has staked the house on stopping the boats. He goes to the country saying, I've passed the law, we will do it. He thinks they might just believe him. I sense after 14 years of failure on so many things that actually people aren't listening anymore.
Yeah, OK. Nigel Farage, really appreciate you being with us. Thank you so much for your expertise. Have a good evening. Excellent. Right, coming up, I bring you a GB News exclusive on the Al-Qaeda terror chief who could be out of prison and roaming Britain's streets in a matter of weeks. You don't want to miss it. But next, do Harry and Meghan's new PR hires suggest a thawing of relations, perhaps, between the runaway royals and the country they turned their backs on nearly 4 years ago? Editor-at-large of the Mail on Sunday, Charlotte Griffiths, gives the inside scoop next. This is Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
J.K. Rowling has accused politicians of snuggling up to trans campaigners. The Harry Potter author has called for an investigation into why political parties are embracing the language of pro-trans groups. So is it time to ditch campaign groups such as those? Well, welcome again to my clashers, former Labour Party advisor Matthew Laza, also businessman and activist Adam Brooks.
I think the Cass report is really welcome. I think there's been a huge amount of agreement, including from some trans rights campaigners, that there's an awful lot of good in the Cass report. I think that I'm more concerned about mermaids, which is currently under a Charity Commission investigation, and some of the reports, if they're to be believed, like sending out chest binders, are more alarming. I think on Stonewall, which has done such great work over the past 30 years on LGBT rights.
It said two-year-olds could be trans. Now, that is one of the most horrifying things I read today. Actually, J.K. Rowling tweeted that out there. To say that a two-year-old can think that they can be another gender when my 4-year-old still thinks she's Elsa on some days. You know, there's no common sense, and to me it's
very badly phrased.
It's very sinister that these people actually believe that these kids want to change gender, and unfortunately out there are parents that almost see a trans kid as a fashion accessory now, and I think this whole agenda has pushed on people that this is normal to change gender, and we have to push back. And as I said earlier, to be trans is not normal.
Well, I don't agree with that phrasing. I think it's
extreme.
It's a big step, Adam, but there are clearly people throughout history who have been
But it's
trans.
not normal behaviour, is it?
I think as far as children are concerned, children need to be given the space to explore the world, and that can include experimenting with, breaking previous gender stereotypes. That doesn't mean that people should be sort of labelled at the age of 2, which I completely disagree with.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News. Coming up, I bring you a bombshell GB News exclusive revealing how the UK's top Al-Qaeda terror chief, who's languished behind bars for a decade, could be back on Britain's streets within a matter of weeks. But first, it's time for the Royal Dispatch with Editor-at-Large of The Mail on Sunday, Charlotte Griffiths. And Harry and Meghan's stateside PR team is due for a shake-up with 2 new appointments made to their comms team at their Archwell Foundation. Former United Talent Agency star Kyle Booler will serve as Director of Communications for US media, and he has a track record, by the way, of pushing, from what I've seen, woke LGBT plus initiatives in his previous role. And also Charlie Gibson, a Brit previously on the books at Haribo, no less, the sweet company. He'll be appointed as Director of Communications at the couple's press headquarters for Europe. So, Charlotte, welcome to the show. Thanks. Do you believe, or is this kind of a sign that Harry and Meghan are trying to, you know, improve relations with the media back in Europe? Because my experience, right, over the past couple of years, I worked at The Sun for a while. Whenever we went to Archwell for comment, you just get stonewalled. You wouldn't get anything. Yeah. So is this kind of a shift in position from Harry and Meghan?
Yeah, in terms of that, this is absolutely a pivot point for Harry and Meghan because, as you know from The Sun, there was a blanket ban on communicating with Harry and Meghan, and often we did anyway because we were just trying to do our due diligence. So you'd write to them and say, we're running a story, would you like to comment? Nothing. Nothing back for years and years and years. And in fact, the complete opposite, we will not engage with any press. And now here we go, we've got a UK press officer. So in some ways, it's a pivot point, but in other ways, why have they appointed this guy who has no tabloid media experience? He's going to get eaten by the wolves. I think it's a really surprise appointment and not in a good way.
And also, by the way, just a little anecdote. When we used to go to Archwell for comment on things and they wouldn't reply, if there was something they weren't happy with the subsequent story, you'd hear from them then. Oh, yeah. They'd say, you know, what the hell are you doing? It's like, well, you know, man your comms team, pal.
And we'd say, you know, we've emailed you 3 times, we've begged you for guidance, we want to be accurate, we've asked you to help us be accurate. Nothing. Then if there's a slight mistake, I mean, I'm talking tiny, you know, they'd go completely crazy in the aftermath.
The really interesting thing here is that these 2 appointments are team additions and not, as we've seen over the past couple of years, replacing staff, some who have reportedly been disgruntled with Harry and Meghan. Yeah. They've not been replaced, so it's an addition to their team. Yeah, so their current woman's been promoted up and then these guys have been brought in. And, you know, don't forget they've lost 17 people in 6 years. Not How many, sorry? 17?
17. I mean, not just in comms, but all over. It's quite a high turnover of staff. And honestly, you know, I don't want to get off on the wrong foot with Charlie Gibson, but...
Have you spoken to him
yet? No, I haven't spoken to him yet. I've got his mobile number. I'm preparing to call him. But, you know, one of my friends who does know him said, look, I just don't think he's going to last 5 minutes because his background is, you know, well, put it this way. He used to work for a company called Little Green PR. And, you know, I think he is quite green. I think he is quite green with this kind of stuff. He did a campaign, well, his company did a campaign with Furbies, and they decorated a Christmas tree with Furbies. And apparently he was once seen handing out Nando's vouchers as part of his, you know, earnest work promoting Nando's.
Charlotte, is this the same guy who worked at UTA?
No, that's a different guy. So that's his American... They've got an American guy.
So Charlie's the Haribo guy?
Yeah, Charlie's the Haribo. So the UK PR is quite... I mean, he's like a marketing manager, but for really... I don't know how to say it. It's sort of like dairy milk, you know, Haribo, Furby kind of brands.
So in terms of Harry and Meghan's approach to the tabloids, based on this guy's experience, I mean, what are they thinking?
I think it could be to do with the marketing of her new American Riviera orchard, which, as we know, is so far jam.
Yeah.
So in a way, he's appropriate for jam. But if he's going to be the point of contact for the whole of the UK tabloid press, he's going to get eaten alive. And you know, as one of my friends put it, you know, he's not going to last 5 minutes. He might be number 18. But let's give him a chance. It's literally day one.
Yeah, don't go on the wrong foot. You don't want to say anything
Charlie.
now that will leave him miffed.
Yeah.
Should we move on to something more positive? So after Princess Catherine's recent photo editing scandal, we'll all know what happened with that. Kensington Palace today released this sweet image of Prince Louis taken on his 6th birthday. So the snap was taken by Kate herself, and it appears to have been left, quite crucially, unedited. But it was released, Charlotte, later than usual. I understand all the newspapers and Fleet Street were waiting at midnight last night for this picture.
Yeah, and when I got into work this morning, we were all sort of on tenterhooks saying, why hasn't it come out? Because normally they release their photos midnight the night before or crack of dawn. So we were thinking, right, we're not going to get one. How disappointing. So we all want to see Louis. We love Louis. We want to see Louis on his 6th birthday. But then eventually it came at around 12:30. And I think, you know, there had been trepidation. You know, I think there had probably been nervousness. We know that Kate is obviously functioning slightly less rapidly than she used to because she's ill. And who can blame her for the trepidation? Because, of course, since the photos come out, everyone's picked it apart. Everyone's been looking for signs of Photoshop because, of course, that's what's going to happen. And I have to say, there's no signs of Photoshop from what I can tell so far.
Well, no, I mean, yeah, if we can just get that picture back up, I mean, you can tell it's not edited because Louis's got, you know, like a scuff or a scratch or something, or a little bit of red on his chin, so it's completely natural. Did Kensington Palace make a point of saying it was unedited?
I don't think they did. I just think they waited for everyone to pick it apart.
Right.
But I think maybe some background guidance was given. You know, this isn't edited, but it was obvious. I mean, it would have been the biggest own goal to have photoshopped it in any way. But one person called Glenn Grattan, who does actually work for the Mail, said that it was very well taken, which meant it didn't need to be photoshopped because Kate's skills are getting better and better, and actually she'd used a much better camera, he thought, than usual, and it had a sort of portrait mode, not a filter. It's hashtag no filter, but you know, she'd used genuine camera skills, and we know she's very good at it, but she's getting better, I think.
Yeah,
so
she's of course a budding photographer, and very quickly, have you got any update on Catherine, her health, and you know the situation with the
No, I mean, she's asked for space, and everyone's just giving her that space.
Because she was awarded I'm not sure if you know about this, she was awarded a special honour today. Were you aware of that?
No, remind me.
No, so the king, pretty much, because of his absence in royal duties, awarded some sort of new honour to Camilla, to Catherine, and kind of thanking them for their...
Yes, I saw the Camilla one.
So Prince William becomes a Great Master of the Order of the Bath. Catherine is now a Companion of Honour, which recognises achievements in arts, medicine, sciences and public service. And the Queen, Camilla, becomes Grand Master of the Order of the British Empire. So I think it was just a nice nod to, you know, their royal duties amid all the, you know, the health trouble they've experienced.
There's nothing more dutiful than releasing that video when she's in the middle of, you know, going through a cancer battle. So full marks to her. And that was all part of the St George's Day Garter revelations appointments.
Yeah.
I think she deserves it. I can't wait to see her back.
Yeah, very excited to see her back. And, of course, we wish her the best of luck with her health, and fingers crossed she's back in the public domain soon.
I think the fact she's taking this photo, by the way, is a sign she's getting better.
You think?
Yeah, probably took a lot of time and energy, you know.
Excellent. Charlotte Griffiths, thank you so much. Royal scoop getter at the Mail on Sunday. Right, coming up, Rishi pledges £500 million to Ukraine and, most importantly, an extra £75 billion to Britain's own defence budget by the end of the decade. But can we afford it? Former Armed Forces Minister Mark Francois, the Tory MP, he gives his expert analysis. But next, a GB News exclusive reveals how Al-Qaeda's main man in Britain, who's been languishing in prison for years, could be back on the streets within a matter of weeks. This is Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News. Now it's time for your weather.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. It'll stay dry, but it will be quite a cold night tonight. And throughout tomorrow, the best of the sunshine will be across north and western areas once again. That's because high pressure is dominating over here. Meanwhile, to the east of the UK, we've got low pressure and this weather front. That's brought cloudier skies throughout this afternoon to the southeast. That should clear away overnight, though, and we'll be left with this northerly wind. That will bring a cold feel to coastal areas through Wednesday, but also a few showers overnight tonight. They should be fairly light and mainly just restrict coastal areas. Further north and west, though, clear and dry and quite cold by tomorrow. We could be down as low as -3 or 4 for some Scottish glens, but the frost should be fairly patchy and should melt away fairly quickly as well. Then we'll be left with a dry and bright day for many western areas of the UK. In the east, though, with this northerly wind, that's always going to drag in a bit more in the way of cloud, and that risk of showers will continue into Wednesday afternoon. We'll feel a little bit brighter, though, than today, as the cloud will be a bit higher, and in the best of the sunshine could see highs of 15 or 16 degrees. Another cold night to come on Wednesday night, so a cold start on Thursday, and then this area of low pressure in the North Sea will bring this band of rain and cloud across northern areas of England, southern Scotland through Thursday. It should be drier and brighter in the south, but then Friday and Saturday look that much more unsettled. However, notice temperatures will start to rise by Saturday.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you could win our biggest prize yet. With thanks to Variety Cruises, a family company sailing since 1942, you have the chance to win a £10,000 7-night small boat cruise for 2. With flights, meals, excursions and drinks included, you'll be able to choose from any one of their 2025 Greek adventures. Plus, you'll also win £10,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer sizzle. And we'll pack you off with these luxury travel gifts. Hurry, as lines close on Friday. For another chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. This is Patrick Christys Tonight with me, Ben Leo. My urgent warning to Britain. In a GB News exclusive, I reveal Al-Qaeda's top terror chief in the UK could be released from prison in a matter of weeks. Meanwhile,
we will increase defence spending to a new baseline of 2.5% of GDP by 2030.
Former Defence Minister Mark Francois joins me live to react to Rishi Sunak's £75 billion defence bonanza. And
no, I'm not particularly proud to be British. I'd rather be French.
See you later then, mate. What to do with self-loathing Britain haters? Also,
one time.
Could you do me one quick favour?
Can you guess what pushed Hollywood star Alec Baldwin to violence in a coffee shop? Tomorrow's newspaper front pages are on the way, and my top panel are ready to go. Tonight, I'm joined by political commentator Esther Krakow, Conservative MP for Romford Andrew Rosendale, and author and broadcaster Amy Nicole Turner. Strap yourselves in. Let's do this. Bin Laden's UK terror mastermind is weeks from being released. Next.
Cheers, Ben. I'm Ray Addison in the GB Newsroom. Good evening to you. Our top stories. The Prime Minister says the government will increase defence spending to 2.5% of GDP by 2030. During a trip to Poland, Rishi Sunak said the budget will reach £87 billion by the end of the decade. Addressing troops, he also said the UK defence industry will be put on a war footing. Mr Sunak called the plans the biggest strengthening of our national defence in a generation.
As Churchill said in 1934, to urge the preparation of defence is not to insert the imminence of war. On the contrary, if war was imminent, preparations for defence would be too late. I believe we must do more to defend our country, our interests and our values. So today I'm announcing the biggest strengthening of our national defence for a generation. We will increase defence spending to a new baseline of 2.5% of GDP by 2030.
Well, earlier, Rishi Sunak warned that President Putin will not stop at the Polish border if his assault on Ukraine is allowed to continue. Earlier, Britain pledged its largest ever package of aid for Kyiv, worth £500 million. During his Warsaw trip, the Prime Minister has been holding talks with the leaders of Poland, Germany and NATO, warning that the defence of Ukraine is essential to our joint security. Ukraine's President Zelensky has welcomed the package, which includes long-range missiles, armoured vehicles and boats. Well, on the day that 5 Channel migrants died off the French coast, including a 4-year-old child, GB News can reveal that more than 250 others have crossed to the United Kingdom. A small boat got into difficulties off Wimereux Beach near Boulogne before 2 a.m. A number of other migrants were rescued, with at least one now critically ill in hospital. 5 other small boats have now been received by Border Force and the Dover Lifeboat, with migrants transported for processing. A further 2 boats were seen heading towards UK waters. Police were faced with violence at a St George's Day event in Whitehall this afternoon when a group tried to force its way through a cordon. Mounted officers on horses needed to intervene when the group broke through a police barrier. The force earlier said that it expected some, quote, far-right groups and groups linked to football clubs to attend the event. Police say 6 people were arrested. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code. It's on your screen right now, or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now, back to Ben.
I have an urgent warning to deliver to the people of Britain about the safety of our streets. In just a few weeks, Al-Qaeda's top terror chief in the UK could be released from prison after taking part in a so-called de-radicalisation programme, where he'll claim he now doesn't want to murder us all in cold blood after all. Rangzib Ahmed, once said to be Osama bin Laden's top operative in Europe, was the first person in the UK to be convicted of directing terrorism. He was jailed for life with a minimum 10-year term in 2008 for plotting the mass slaughter of Brits, and was caught with a book of terror contacts written in invisible ink and a rucksack that contained traces of explosives. His scheme was revealed with the discovery of 3 diaries, which were found to contain details and phone numbers of key Al-Qaeda operatives. Since then, he's received, of course he has, almost £1 million in legal aid, your money, to help fund his bid for freedom, and he's not far off. Rochdale-born Ahmed was rejected for parole in September 2022 after officials judged he was far too dangerous to be released. However, he's now been approved for a new parole board hearing where he's expected to argue he's a changed man thanks to a rehab programme that's taught him to be a good person. The hearing takes place on June 20th, just under 4 weeks from now. And if officials agree to release him, Ahmed is likely to be freed by the end of the month. So it's no secret that around 90% of the 40,000 extremists on MI5's watch list are Islamists like bin Laden's man here in the UK, and only a fraction can ever be permanently watched at any one time. I spoke to the parole board about Ahmed, and they confirmed his case would be heard next month. They said a panel will carefully examine a huge range of evidence, including details of the original crime and any evidence of behaviour change, as well as exploring the harm done and impact the crimes had on victims. Evidence from witnesses, including probation officers, psychiatrists and psychologists, officials supervising the offender in prison, as well as victim personal statements, are then given at the hearing. Parole reviews are undertaken thoroughly and with extreme care. Protecting the public is our #1 priority. Well, that's all very well, but Ahmed's freedom bid comes just days after it emerged another jailed terrorist is trying to secure an exit from prison. Parviz Khan, who threatened to kidnap and behead a British Muslim soldier, will also appear before the parole board next week. So the last thing this country needs right now is extremist scumbags back-walking amongst us. I trust the parole board, in both these cases, will do the right thing. I'm going to get the thoughts now of counter-terror expert, former head of the National Counter-Terror Security Office, Chris Phillips. Good evening, Chris. Thanks for joining me. How concerned should we be about the potential of this Al-Qaeda monster being released potentially at the end of June?
Yeah, very concerned. And it's amazing. He's made a remarkable de-radicalisation in the last year or so. From being too dangerous to release onto the streets, it seems that he may now well be safe after all. One good news for the prison service, I suppose. They've got one less dangerous person inside the prison to radicalise others. But of course, him on the streets is really, really dangerous for the public. And we can joke about it. But these people are not de-radicalised. They are very, very dangerous people. And even if he doesn't go on to commit other offences, the chances of him radicalising others in the community are very, very high.
Well, yeah, of course, as you said, I echo your words. How can you go from 1 minute wanting to slaughter Britons en masse in cold blood and the next couple of months having gone through a programme, you say, well, no, I'm OK, I don't want to do that anymore, that's fine. You make a really good point, Chris, because new stats from, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, reveal that 1 in 5 Muslim prisoners is now white, which was sparking fears Islamist gangs are behind a surge of conversions in prison. So even if this guy does get out, there's a chance that he could have been, for the last 10 years in prison, converting and brainwashing other lags with Islamist extremism.
Yeah, unfortunately, our criminal justice system is just not set up to deal with people that want to go and commit mass murder. And to release him into the community is taking such a risk that really the criminal justice system needs to be amended to say some people just aren't fit to be released no matter what.
Can we talk briefly about the job that MI5 and the security services have in this country? Because the terror watch list is vast, and as far as I understand, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, there's not enough agents to cover them all at once 24/7. Is that right?
No, absolutely. And it's not just MI5. It's the police counter-terrorism units and the surveillance teams. It takes an enormous amount of manpower, womanpower, to follow just one person. Of course, there are technical measures they can use these days, but we know for a fact that they're not able to monitor even a portion of the very dangerous people that are out there. And to make that so much worse by releasing someone who's already a terrorist.
Why was this guy given a life sentence, but with a minimum term of 10 years? What happened to proper justice in this country?
Well, you know, it does make me laugh, really. I think the prison sentencing systems are just ridiculous. With, you know, you think someone's going to go to prison for a long time and then they're out usually halfway through. It's just telling lies to the public, I think. And if we don't get our system right, if we don't build enough prisons to keep these people locked up, then we aren't going to be safe. It's as simple as that.
Have you any idea about this rehabilitation programme in prisons? I mean, trying to, you know, de-radicalise him. Any idea what kind of things he would have gone through? Because as I mentioned in the top of the show a few minutes ago, 1 minute he wants to kill us all, and the next he's gone to a few training courses and he says, well, no, I've changed my mind, I'm OK, let me out.
Yeah, well, he would do, wouldn't he? He's not going to get out unless he says that. So he knows that. And we've seen it before. We've seen people that play the system. You know, we put our faith in the parole boards to do a good job. Clearly, you know, we know that terrorists have been released and committed terror attacks within days sometimes of them being released. So it is a bit like playing games with our safety, I think.
Yeah, OK. Chris, really appreciate you being with us. Thank you for joining the show.
Nice to speak to you.
Let's get the thoughts now of my panel. Social commentator Esther Krakow, Conservative MP for Romford, Andrew Rosendale, and the author and broadcaster, Amy Nicole Turner. Amy, let's start with you. You don't believe in prisons, do you?
I believe in prisons for people like this.
Oh, you've changed your tune now? Because
no,
I think
I've always said prisons are to keep dangerous people away from the public and not to be used for criminalising poverty with thousands and thousands of people that shouldn't really be there. And it's probably filling up prisons with people who perhaps would be better out of prison, which has brought us to a situation where there's no room to put people who actually need to be in prison in prison, like this guy, I would say. Now, I'm not saying it would be impossible to de-radicalise anyone, but I think in his case, you know, he's 47 years old. He, 2 years ago, was deemed still being a risk to the public. So something tells me I don't think he's going to pass this parole review.
Andrew, can jihadi extremists be de-radicalised? I don't think they can, but do you think they can?
I don't trust that at all. I wouldn't let the man out. And clearly he has attempted to murder large numbers of British people. He's clearly someone that has hatred inside him. He's demonstrated that before. You cannot risk letting people like that out on the streets. There is no evidence, from what I've heard, that this man has been de-radicalised, and I think it would be a huge risk to put him on the streets and potentially radicalise other people, but also commit murder, which is what he tried to do years ago. So our first priority must surely be to protect the British public.
Problem is, Esther Krakow, do you have faith in the parole board? Because we've seen so many times where they've let people out early, not just with Islamist extremists or terrorists, but, you know, paedophiles, whoever else, and they've gone on to re-offend. And Chris Phillips made a really good point there about our prisons are just jam-packed. Are they kicking people out early because there's just simply not enough prison space?
Well, the parole board is just one contingency measure. I think the bigger problem is, will he be able to radicalise other people if and when he does eventually come out of prison? And there are questions around the efficacy of our counter-terrorism programmes, the PREVENT programme, are they underfunded? There are loads of communities in this country that are very self-isolating, that live basically parallel lives alongside the rest of us. You know, what are the resources of counter-terrorism agencies to actually infiltrate these communities? So if someone like this is released, that he doesn't have the resources to go and carry out terrorist attacks. You know, I don't necessarily think it's necessarily down to the parole board to keep us safe, although that is one of the backstops. It's actually about a wider institutional problem. Someone like this, you have to question, where did he get his radical views from, and who radicalised them, and who radicalised them? And you see a whole chain of events, and these are probably like, you know, communities that are really self-isolated, like I said, and embedded within each other.
He was
so
born
it's hard
in
to
Rochdale.
infiltrate them. Yeah, well,
but you know, that's interesting, because if it was possible to de-radicalise people like this guy, I don't think this guy, but then he could be a great person to call upon to tell you,
or to infiltrate the community that radicalised him. That's the point.
Yeah.
We don't have those resources.
Hang on, we're taking a huge risk here. This man has tried to murder people in cold blood. Letting him out on the streets,
I don't think he should be let out.
on the chance that he has de-radicalised. How do we know he really has?
Well, yeah.
What are we going to say if he goes out and he kills innocent people? I wouldn't want to take that risk. I think he should stay in prison and remain locked up.
All the evidence suggests he probably won't be released, but there are people like him that already are released. So since 1998, 1 in 4 people that have been convicted of terrorism offences have been of an asylum background, and it's because our asylum system hasn't actually given them the resources to properly integrate. So they become self-isolated and they get indulged with this sort of ideologies. But you're worried about someone who's already in prison. Guess what? There are people like him on our streets. So it's about the wider problem of, you know, having the resources to actually stop these people from being radicalised.
And I think the more concerning thing is this guy is a Brit. He was born and bred in Rochdale, where one George Calloway is now the MP, of course. And he's one of our own. You know, he's a Brit. So where are these people being radicalised? I don't think you can de-radicalise these kind of people. It's a rather sick and twisted ideology. But there we go. Fingers crossed for the parole board making that decision next month, and we'll bring you the latest when we have it as well. Right, coming up, Hollywood star Alec Baldwin. He's been confronted by an irritating pro-Palestine supporter. Plus, we bring you the very first of tomorrow's front newspaper pages with tonight's top panel. But next, the PM today pledged £500 million to Ukraine, and most importantly, an extra £75 billion to Britain's own defence budget by 2030. But with us all struggling at home, can we really afford it? I'll be joined by former Minister for the Armed Forces, Mark Francois MP. This is Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Mark White was saying there, Sue, that he thinks it's getting worse, and you were nodding along to that. You've seen this over decades. Situation is sprawling along the coast, more people, and the danger is ramping up.
Definitely, because the numbers and the money it's run like a military operation. I mean, I've been told that by the National Crime Agency, and I don't need to be told it by them to know it. It is meticulous because there's so much money involved. So they're marshalling migrants here, the gangs, they're controlling the gangs, and there will be a kingpin, you know, in some city far away in Erbil or even in Paris or in Brussels, who never goes anywhere near the beaches. It's like a Ponzi scheme, really.
Yeah. With that in mind, there's such vested interest, such money, such demand, a never-ending string of demand of people who want to come here.
People are already on their way, remember?
Yeah.
If we stop them now, they're already leaving. There's people leaving the Sudan now are going to reach the only place they want to get to, the French beaches, to get to the UK. They'll arrive in 2.5 years' time.
And so,
you see, they're on their way.
If it's that organised, that lucrative, that desirable, how on earth do we ever break that chain?
It sounds incredibly harsh, but I'm sure, I think if the EU change politically in the June elections, which I think it probably will,
yes,
I think they will put up, as the Greeks have done, holding camps all over Europe, the coasts of Europe, where people are assessed, just to see who is coming in, which would be a plus, as the Greeks have done, because we have no idea who is coming in.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News. Coming up, tonight's panel returns to bring us the very first of tomorrow's front pages. But first, we welcome former Armed Forces Minister and Tory MP Mark Francois. And his boss today, Rishi Sunak, announced a huge increase in defence spending with an extra £75 billion pledged to protect the nation over the next 6 years.
As Churchill said in 1934, to urge the preparation of defence is not to insert the imminence of war. On the contrary, if war was imminent, preparations for defence would be too late. I believe we must do more to defend our country, our interests and our values. So today I'm announcing the biggest strengthening of our national defence for a generation. We will increase defence spending to a new baseline of 2.5% of GDP by 2030.
So it will bring the annual defence budget to £87 billion by 2030, meaning the UK will be by far the second largest defence spender in NATO after the US. And it comes, of course, hot on the heels of Sunak promising an extra £500 million to help Ukraine fight off the Russians. Mark, welcome to the studio. These are huge figures being pledged. Can we afford it, first of all?
Yes. Partly it's going to be funded by tighter control of the civil service headcount, by trying to return the size of the civil service to where it was pre-COVID. So that's partly how we can pay for it. Look, it's a very significant announcement, going to 2.5% of GDP by 2030. So as you said, that's about, over that period between now and then, about another £75 billion. How can you put that into something that people could follow? A new Queen Elizabeth-class aircraft carrier costs about £3.5 billion. So, I mean, we wouldn't spend it in exactly this way, but that money could buy 20 new aircraft carriers.
That is the scale of the increase that the Prime Minister has just announced. It's very, very significant, and we need to do this in order to deter Vladimir Putin or President Xi or any other unelected dictator from trying to go to war with the Western democracies.
Got it. Why didn't Jeremy Hunt mention anything about defence in the budget? I know you and a lot of other people made a lot of noise off the back of that budget saying there was nothing for defence. Why now? Is it just political electioneering?
No, I mean, as I and others said, we thought the budget should have done something like this. But, you know, in life, you should give credit where it's due. So the all-party House of Commons Defence Committee were pretty excoriating about the budget. You know, so within a couple of months of that, the government have done, they've made a much better decision. They've committed to a massive increase in defence spending, which is what this is. I also serve on the Public Accounts Committee. The MOD has a 10-year equipment plan, and the PAC, assisted by the National Audit Office, go through it with a fine-tooth comb. We concluded there was a £29 billion gap between A, what the MOD said they had to buy, and B, what we could fund. This money more than plugs that gap. What this means is the MOD can now afford all the equipment they were already going to buy, plus they can buy new equipment, and I particularly would like to see... What I'd like to see...
What do we need?
Well, I would like to see some of this extra... Obviously, we've got to pay for what we were originally going to pay. I'd like to see some of this money spent on personnel, improving their accommodation, their living standards, so that they don't keep leaving. We need to spend money on people, because without people, the rest doesn't work. But I'd also like to see some of this extra money spent on an Albion Dome, a UK version of the Israeli Iron Dome.
Interesting. So Penny Mordaunt was mooting this the other day. I think Number 10, well, the Sunday Telegraph, they revealed that the Treasury previously rebuffed a request from the MOD for a British Iron Dome like we see in Israel. Has the position changed on that?
Well, we've now got the money to build it. That revelation came from the Defence Committee.
How much will it cost out of the 75 billion extra?
It's difficult to say because there are different variants of the system. But if the first duty of government is the defence of the realm, which I've always believed it is, my father was a D-Day veteran, right? Then in the 21st century, that means defending against ballistic missile attack and cruise missile attack. And for that, you need something like an Iron Dome. We're talking billions of pounds. This is not cheap, but we've now got an extra 75 billion, a massive number. Let's spend some of that on having an Iron Dome equivalent for the United Kingdom to protect the homeland.
Got it. OK, let me talk to you about this further Ukraine funding. The US, of course, have been dragging their heels. The Republicans finally today or yesterday approved £61 billion package. Rishi Sunak today has said another 500 million will be used to arm Ukraine. Some people, Mark, a lot of our viewers will say, we don't agree with this. We cannot afford it. Our public services are on their knees. The country's on its knees. We're skint, quite frankly. Why are we sending more money to Ukraine? Is it a bottomless pit of taxpayer money?
No. I was part of a delegation of senior Conservatives, Liz Truss, IDS, Lord Howard, myself and Jack Lepresti, who went to Washington prior to Christmas, and we lobbied Republican congressmen to vote for that package. So I was delighted when it went through. We were in a congressman's office. He asked effectively the same question. He said, why should I ask the taxpayers in my congressional district to send their dollars to Ukraine? And I said, because you're a member of NATO and it's cheaper than sending your sons and daughters. This is about deterring a bloodthirsty dictator called Vladimir Putin. This man was a regular colonel in the KGB. He's not a Boy Scout. Russians respect strength. This is strength. The Prime Minister said we'll put our defence industry on a war footing. Not because we want to go to war, but because we want to deter one. The Romans had a saying for it. Civis pacem parabellum. He who desires peace should prepare for war.
Got it.
We desire peace,
so, Mark,
so we are now preparing to defend ourselves.
Okay,
that is what this money is
so for. Do we support Ukraine to the death, even if it means bankrupting England? When does it stop? You know, is it a bottomless pit? I've asked you. When does it stop?
No.
What are the conditions for stopping aid to Ukraine?
We don't support Ukraine to the death. We support Ukraine to the life. Ukraine must win, because in reality, if we don't stop Vladimir Putin in Ukraine, we'll have to stop him in the Baltic states, or we'll have to stop him in Poland, and that means NATO, and that means potentially World War III. So the Ukrainians, who are incredibly brave, are fighting for us. They're fighting for our freedom, not just theirs. They deserve our wholehearted support, and part of this package is to give them exactly that.
OK, but please answer. Is there any condition which aid to Ukraine must end financially? What if we're going bankrupt? Do we still? Is Ukraine a priority over the UK?
It's all
because essentially that's what you're saying. If you're saying we arm Ukraine and we send them unlimited amounts of taxpayer money, when does it end?
No, it's not unlimited amounts.
So when does it end?
Well, it's all part of the same thing. We have to make sure that Russia doesn't win, because if Russia wins in Ukraine, he'll keep going. He won in Crimea. He'll keep coming. So it's far better to stop him now by spending 2.5% of GDP. In the Second World War, we were spending nearly 50% of GDP on defence for obvious reasons. It's like an insurance policy. You pay your premium just in case, right? Because if you get this wrong, there is no future, right? So we spend this money now on ourselves. A lot of it goes to our own defence industry. It creates jobs and prosperity. Yeah. And we spend it on the Ukrainians to stop a wicked dictator called Vladimir Putin. That's what this money is for. My father taught me, he made me promise when I was a boy that I would never take living in a free society for granted. Yeah. Well, freedom isn't free. It costs. This money is worth spending so that we can continue to live in a free and democratic country, which we should never, ever take for granted. Civis pacem, parabellum.
OK, and you make a good point. Actually, a lot of the money that gets sent to Ukraine from the US and the UK doesn't just go to a Ukrainian bank account. It goes to weapons manufacturers, BAE Systems, whoever else, so it creates jobs.
Those in-laws that helped stop the Russian invasion are built in Belfast.
Yeah, definitely. Marc Francois, I really appreciate you being with us. Thank you so much. And may I congratulate you on, lobbying the government for what many people have wanted for a long time, increased defence. Thank you for being with us. Very much appreciated.
It's an honour to be here. Thank you.
Great. Coming up, are you ashamed to be English? One bloke we're going to show you certainly is. And get this, apparently he'd rather be French. I say put him on a dinghy back to Calais. Happy St George's Day, that man. But next, we'll bring you the very first of tomorrow's front pages, hot off the press, with tonight's panel of fiery pundits. This is Patrick Christys. Tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News. Stay with us.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. It will stay dry, but it will be quite a cold night tonight. And throughout tomorrow, the best of the sunshine will be across north and western areas once again. That's because high pressure is dominating over here. Meanwhile, to the east of the UK, we've got low pressure and this weather front. That's brought cloudier skies throughout this afternoon to the southeast. That should clear away overnight, though, and we'll be left with this northerly wind. That will bring a cold feel to coastal areas through Wednesday, but also a few showers overnight tonight. Should be fairly light and mainly just restrict coastal areas. Further north and west, though, clear and dry and quite cold by tomorrow. We could be down as low as -3 or 4 for some Scottish glens, but the frost should be fairly patchy and should melt away fairly quickly as well. Then we'll be left with a dry and bright day for many western areas of the UK. In the east, though, with this northerly wind, that's always going to drag in a bit more in the way of cloud, and that risk of showers will continue into Wednesday afternoon. We'll feel a little bit brighter, though, than today, as the cloud will be a bit higher, and then the best of the sunshine could see highs of 15 or 16 degrees. Another cold night to come on Wednesday night, so a cold start on Thursday, and then this area of low pressure in the North Sea will bring this band of rain and cloud across northern areas of England, southern Scotland through Thursday. It should be drier and brighter in the south, but then Friday and Saturday look that much more unsettled. However, notice temperatures will start to rise by Saturday.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Patrick, Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News. Time now for tomorrow's newspapers. Let's kickstart with the Metro. Let this be the last Channel tragedy. Girl among 5 dead as a dinghy packed with 112 migrants flounders off the French coast. I just can't believe these cruel smuggling criminals can pack 100 people onto such flimsy dinghies. The Independent, think again, Prime Minister, 7-year-old is crushed to death. This is why we add our voice to the UN and urge think again on Rwanda. The Sun. That really nice picture, very sweet, of Prince Louis on his 6th birthday, unedited, of course. The Daily Telegraph, war footing as PM ramps up defence spending, as we just discussed with Mark Francois. An extra £75 billion of funding shows our enemies that we're resolute and determined. And Mark Francois then revealing that he wants some of the money spent on an Iron Dome back into Israel. And the Times newspaper says UK to spend more on defence, and also a picture story there of all those migrants packed on the dinghies. I want to go to a revelation in the Express this evening. So tomorrow in the Daily Express, Priti Patel, the former Home Secretary, she has come out, she's broken her silence on Rwanda once again and said that she backs the Rwanda plan, she backs Rishi Sunak, and she says that the opponents of this policy have not only offered no solutions to tackle illegal migration, but have over the last 2 years given succour to those evil criminal gangs that put lives at risk. Tens of thousands across the Channel, with some perishing at sea. Andrew Rosendale, first of all, what's your thoughts on Rwanda?
Well, I voted for it last night. I want Rwanda to work. I want these people that are coming here illegally to know that if they come here illegally, they can't stay. They leave. And this is what we have to do now. We've passed the legislation. We need to be very clear about this. If you try to get into the United Kingdom without permission, you won't be allowed to stay. And so what Priti is saying is that now we've passed this legislation, we need to let it work. Let's stop objecting, let's start supporting the policy, and those people that are coming here might then think maybe we won't even try. So hopefully we'll act.
Well, Andrew, Nigel Farage says this whole Rwanda scheme is absolutely pie in the sky. It's not going to work. It's riddled with legal loopholes. It's totally pointless. And by the way, at a cost of hundreds of millions of pounds to the taxpayer.
Look, Nigel makes good points as always, but it's now the law. We should give it a chance to work. However, I do think in the long term, we still need to leave the ECHR.
What's the plan for the remaining 99% of migrants? Because this is 200 sorted out, in theory. So what we're doing with the rest?
Right, so the point is, this is a deterrent. So if people can see that they're not going to get into Britain, that they will be sent out straight away, it's hoped that less will actually try to get here in the first place. Because the people benefiting from this are the people traffickers. They're evil. People are dying in these boats and they're making money out of it. So actually we're offering them a safe haven, a place to live and to be looked after in a place where they're actually going to be safe, which they aren't going to be if they come over on illegal boats.
OK, let's hear from Esther. Esther, what's your thoughts on Rwanda? Is it going to work? If not, what's your solution?
Oh, the problem problem with the Rwanda scheme. There are many problems. There are many things that you could say. The cost, the legal loopholes, the fact that Rwanda is currently engaged with military skirmishes with the east of the DRC, and there are questions around the president of Rwanda, who's been president for quite some time, which many don't think is very democratic. The problem is this Rwanda scheme is supposed to basically be a copy of what the Australians did. However, it wasn't mapped out in the same way that the Australians did it. So I know up front, the Australians spent about 800 million Australian dollars to make this scheme work. So we're talking about the cost of this up front. But yes, the Aussies did foot a lot of money up front. But the problem is the Rwandans have already sold 70% of the government housing that was meant to house these people. The Australians didn't have that problem. No, but the Australians didn't have that problem. So if you're going to copy what the Australians did, which I have no problem with because it did work, you have to communicate with the public exactly what the plan is, why were they spending so much money up front, and actually inspire faith. I'm not saying that I'm against this because I'm just against Rwanda. Again, I do think you make a valid point that the people that are criticising the scheme haven't come up with an alternative. I was in Skegness this weekend, and I actually saw one of the hotels that these migrants are being put up in, boarded up, because the local residents were so incensed because they don't know who these people are. That's fair.
The British public, their patience has run out over this. We cannot let this continue.
Well, it's not just because of this, it's because of how much it's costing.
We have to ensure that all these people traffickers and all these people trying to get into the country know that they're not going to be allowed to stay. If they try to get here, they'll be sent to a third place, but they still will be safe. That's the point.
It's just that the numbers, they don't add up at all, because still nobody is addressing this fact that it's 200 there and then it's reciprocal, so 200 migrants come back to here. So if the thought of getting in a dinghy where your chance of death is like quite high doesn't put you off, then why would a 1 in 200 chance of going to Rwanda put you off? Particularly when you add that it's going to be a great life and a new start. How is that a deterrent?
Some Brits would like to go to Rwanda.
Because most of these people actually want to come here because they're economic migrants. They're not really seeking asylum. Most of them, I don't believe, are genuine. So, actually, if they know they're not going to get into the United Kingdom, there's no incentive for them to get into the boat.
I mean, can I just say there's a point that hasn't been touched on, which is the deterrent element, which I don't actually think this is going to be a deterrent, because the reason why they're coming here is because we have over double the acceptance rates for asylum seekers as the EU, which is pretty liberal on this. You could actually make the case that why don't we just have a cap on how many people we can accept as refugees, or turn more people away, but none of that has been addressed. Instead, they're pouring all this money on the scheme that the public has no faith in.
Yeah, and actually, Mark White, our Home and Security Editor, he's been to Calais loads of times. We've played clips many a time on this channel. He's asked migrants in Calais, in Dunkirk, are you going to be deterred by Rwanda? And they've said no. They've laughed at our cameraman. They laugh at us. It's a complete joke. And quite frankly, I have to agree with Nigel and Richard Tice. The only way you're going to stop this is doing what the Australians did. You can do it, I think, under the UN Convention of the Laws at Sea, Article 25, which stops the travel of innocent ships based on national security concerns. But we wait and see what happens. I mean, Rishi's gambled his whole political future on it. So, yeah, good luck to him. Now, this is a really, really interesting video. American actor Alec Baldwin, remember him? He's the guy who he shot on a film set a firearms expert with a gun that he didn't think was loaded, but he shot her, and unfortunately the woman died. So he got bombarded by a deranged pro-Palestine activist whilst trying to order some coffee in LA. Watch this.
Alec, can you please say free Palestine one time? Why did you kill that lady? You killed that lady and got no jail time? No jail time, Alec? Just say free Palestine one time. One time. One time.
Call the police.
One time, Alec. You know he's a criminal. You know he's a criminal. Come on, Alec. Just say free Palestine one time. One time.
Could you do me one quick favor?
So there we go. Was that justified? I mean, look, I'm no big fan of Alec Baldwin, especially after what happened with that film set incident. But, you know, as if saying free Palestine under duress like that is going to make any difference anyway. Right, coming up, my favourite part of the show as I crown tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass, and some very worthy nominations indeed. But next, are you ashamed to be English and would you rather be French? I'll introduce one man who says exactly that. You don't want to miss that video in full. This is Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
In every corner of the world, people celebrate English tradition and values as members of the Royal Society of St George. Yet here in England, branches are closing as membership dwindles.
I feel that in this country, St George is all but dead and buried.
Until recently, Stephen Warden from Wigston was president of the Leicestershire branch. Despite spending £1,500 of his own money advertising, he couldn't find enough members to keep it running.
I did everything humanly possible to get new members into the branch from the local environment, but they were just not interested in joining.
He thinks changing demographics and declining interest in the society's values contributed to disappearing membership. But he also blames political leadership at national and local levels. Stephen claims his proposal for a St George's Day parade was repeatedly rejected by Leicester City Council over 10 years. A celebration is planned for St George's Day, but like most cities and towns, no parade will pass through the streets. A Leicester City Council spokesperson said, Leicester's annual celebrations of St George's Day have been organised and funded by the City Council for many decades, and they remain an important part of the city's festival calendar. Some in Leicester say they would like to see more done to celebrate England's patron saint.
I think it's a sign of patriotism. I think it helps the country. We celebrate a lot of religious festivals here.
People forget, I think, what is important to England.
Maybe it's been sort of jumped onto with the wrong crowd, but I think nowadays it's just completely different.
Back in Wigston, St George's Cross flies above Stephen's home.
It makes me feel good because I know at least I've not forgotten St George if everybody else has.
Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News. Time now for the rest of tomorrow's front pages. We start with the Mirror. Great story they had yesterday. They've done a follow today on Jill Dando. A key witness says a man she spotted running minutes after Starr's murder is the Serbian assassin. Really interesting story. And I couldn't believe yesterday she was only 37 when she died. The Daily Mail, biggest boost for defence in a generation, also carries that really sweet picture of Louis. The Eye says Tories unveil UK's biggest hike to military spending for a generation. The Guardian, PM to raise defence spending to put arms industry on, quote, war footing. And the Daily Express, about time too. Civil service job cuts to pay for defence boost. Rishi Sunak will axe 70,000 civil servant jobs and free up billions of pounds to boost Britain's defences. This is music to my ears, Amy Nicole Turner.
The defence boost.
The work-shy civil servants who want to stay at home. Did you, by the way, did you know, slightly separate point, did you know that the civil service were threatening to strike because they were being forced to come into the office for 2 days a week? Absolutely outrageous. Jacob Rees-Mogg, of course, trying to get them back in the office. But now, Sunak saying he's going to axe 70,000 civil servant jobs to free up billions for our defence programme.
Right. Well, I'd like to know what they're doing first before we cut them. This is what people always talk about.
Absolutely nothing. Sitting at home in their underpants.
I'm assuming they're going to automate a lot of their jobs or bring in AI. Also, they're boosting defence spending that they cut. So is it really a boost or is it really replacing what already should have been there?
Andrew?
Well, I've always been against cuts in defence. I think it's been a mistake. And I'm very pleased the government are now going to increase defence spending. But in terms of civil servants, they really should get back to the office.
Why?
Everyone should be working. Nobody should be sitting at home and thinking the world can operate from your bedroom. People need to get back to the office. Public buildings should be properly operating, and the pandemic now should be a thing of the past. We should get back to normal life again. But unfortunately, there are still people that think they've got a right to stay indoors, and I don't think they do. I think that if they're paid by the public purse, they should come to work and do their job.
Well, I think it depends on the job they're doing. If they can do it from home, the only thing is them wanting to work 4 days a week. I think that's a brilliant idea because that's an excuse to cut a fifth of the population. Because if you can do your work 4 days a week, then you don't need to be employed.
They want to be paid for 5 days a week.
Well, but that's the point. But that's the point. So that is a justification for this cut because there are clearly too many of them.
So let me give you some details. So around £3 billion will be found by returning the civil service to pre-pandemic staffing levels by the end of the decade. Extra staff were brought in to deliver Brexit and deal with COVID, but staffing levels will be cut by 70,000. Senior Tories welcome the plan to spend more cash on the military instead of Whitehall. I mean, as I said, these guys, this civil service, riddled with leftists, they don't want the government to work properly. Arguably, they brought down Boris Johnson. These people are striking because they have to go to the office for 2 days a week. Can you imagine the optics of this to people that sit at home working 9 to 5, 5 days a week, 6 days a week, even 2 jobs, that these absolute, you know, I want to call them cretins in Whitehall, crying about having to go to the office for 2 days a week.
But the thing is, it's such a cliche, isn't it, to demonise the civil service? Like, come on, we can do a little bit better than that, because, you know, the reason that it comes across a lot of the time that they don't, they're halting ministers' plans, because they're the experts in ministers' plans and can see whether they will work or not, whether they're realistic or not. So I don't think it's entirely
you don't
fair
believe in the blob
to
and the deep
tar
state,
them all as the blob and the deep state.
You don't believe in that concept?
No, not really.
So I hope in our manifesto, one of the key pledges should be major civil service reform. We need to reform it. Too much power, too many of them, ministers dancing to civil servants' tune. No. Ministers are elected, they should be making decisions. We should be reducing the size of the state, cutting taxes and actually running the country more efficiently.
Can I ask you an honest question, Andrew? How much power does the civil service wield amongst ministers? Because we saw with the likes of Dominic Raab, he was accused of being a bully when, in actual fact, I've heard on good grounds that he was just, you know, like he had high standards, he liked getting things done. If they don't like you politically, and we know that the civil service is riddled with leftists and people, you know, of that ilk, how easy or hard can they make your job?
I fear you're making a point, Ben. I'm afraid that I think the civil servants, if they don't like your politics, they like what you're trying to do, they'll find ways of delaying, stopping you. And as we found with Dominic Raab, Priti Patel went through a similar thing, I think Suella too. Civil servants round up against the minister, and I don't think that's right. I think that the civil servants have now got way too much control over what happens. We need to reform the civil service.
Esther?
I think that's a very valid point. There is power in numbers. I think one of the things that really bothers me about the civil servants is civil service is you can get accused of something as a minister or a government official, and the person who's accusing you is anonymous, and the person they don't go through any sort of public scrutiny. Well, yes, but that's what happened with Dominic. We don't know the nature. We don't know who accused Dominic Raab or which group of people. We don't know, you know, what basically anything internally that went on, but we know that Dominic Raab was the face of this kind of smear campaign. And I do think that's a problem, because that's just unfair. Regardless of whether you agree with someone's politics or not, they should be at least entitled to some sort of justice. So I do agree there. My issue is not necessarily from people working from home. It depends on how, like, what you're doing and whether you're being
3 days a week, though, out of 5?
That's the thing. If you think that you can do your job working from home for a 4-day week but receiving 5 days a day, great. You're only employed for 4 days a week and we cut the force. You're making the best case to slim down the workforce.
But isn't the whole point work smarter, not harder? It's not about the quantity of time. It's about the quality of time.
If you can work faster,
but if you can do that job in that amount of time, and then you have a nice time off, then your work-life balance is better and you're more productive.
Why do you get paid for your time off?
Because then you are more productive in the time that you're there.
OK,
you need interaction between people that work together. If you're not together, you're not talking about issues and you don't get things done.
OK, I'd argue they're all sitting at home in their underpants watching Loose Women, but let me show you this video.
Recharging, good for the
very funny. Online news outfit Politics Joe went out and asked those on the streets if they were proud of their country, and they came across this charming fella.
I hate England. This place sucks. The majority of people that I've met in England that are English, no, not all of them, obviously, you can't speak for everyone ever, but there's a good proportion of them that are just horrible people. The government sucks, the weather's awful, the job market's terrible, we get paid terribly. I mean, obviously the NHS now was really good and now it's not being funded nearly enough. No, I'm not particularly proud to be British. And we've got awful stereotypes for the rest of the world. I mean, we're the most obnoxious comes to holidays, and it's just horrible. We refuse to learn other people's languages, and it's disgusting. No, I'd rather be French.
Go on then, mate. Get on a dinghy. Off you go to Calais or Dunkirk. Esther, are you proud to be English, British?
Yeah, but I'm not surprised by his views. This is the thing. That's another thing that bothers me. I'm not bothered by what he said. Of course, he's entitled to his opinion. I'm bothered with people's patriotism being linked to the state of the country or decisions made by politicians. That's not real patriotism.
Andrew?
Well, he should be ashamed. Doesn't he realise that his forebears fought for our freedom and democracy? He lives in a free society today because of what our ancestors have given us, and we should cherish what we've got, not rubbish our own country.
Yeah. Amy, very quickly.
Well, I think that, Andrew, you should be ashamed on behalf of the government that you've put that man in that mood to say those things.
But,
He's
Amy,
a disgruntled constituent, potentially.
Gen Zers, they haven't got a clue about anything. You know, they think they know everything. Time to crown tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. Esther, who is your Greatest Britain tonight, please?
So my Greatest Britain is Ricky Gleeson, who is also a friend of mine, so it's a bit of a shout-out. But he runs an organisation called Huw Edwards, which is a charity shop and a soon-to-be gym, which helps ex-offenders and people at risk of offending to get clean and to get back on track. He himself was a heroin addict who got clean, who got fit, joined the Navy and is now part of the army. But he's a living, breathing definition of what you can do with your life if you really choose to change things and turn your life around and give back to your community.
Nice. Good stuff. Andrew?
Well, my greatest Briton is England's patron saint, St George. We are celebrating St George's Day, and I think that we should give him the accolade because it's time we celebrated love of country and pride in being English.
I think Amy would have something to say about that, because in the green room she was banging on about him being Turkish or something.
I was going to say, I wouldn't be a proper lefty if I didn't say he's a migrant who was born in Palestine and he'd be on the way to Rwanda.
Well, at least
he's still our patron saint.
Amy, at least
shows how inclusive we are.
At least you accept he was a working migrant, he's an economic migrant, and, you know, that's very interesting. Who's your union greatest Briton?
So it's James Timpson, the CEO of Timpson's, because he sounds like a legend, actually, and he's currently offering free dry cleaning in all stores to anyone who is unemployed and might need an outfit cleaned for a job interview. Oh, well, that's brilliant, isn't it?
I think, I mean, that is great what he's doing, but I don't think that's new for him. He's done a lot of similar things in the past.
He's a ledge.
Yeah, I'm going to go with your man, Ricky. Is it Ricky?
Really? Oh,
yeah.
wow.
I think it's a really great story. And actually, whenever this happens, you know, sometimes it takes you to go to the depths of hell before you can get the inspiration and the motivation to turn your life around. And, yeah, I really love the story. So well done, Ricky Gleeson. Props to you. Union Jackass.
Yes, Patrick Harvey, who is the Green co-leader, who basically has nothing to rebut the Cass review, except that it's ignored evidence and has been weaponized to undermine trans people's very existence without offering any alternative evidence of his own. He just doesn't like that it didn't support his side of the argument, basically, which is horrifying, because I thought he would be more horrified by the number of children that were basically used as lab rats.
And they're all doing it as well. Andrew, Union Jackass?
Well, it's his Dr. Shola. She says in her tweet today, I find nothing inspiring or patriotic about Britain's St George's flag. Why do these people hate our country so much? I think she should get the Union Jackass.
She's so divisive.
So divisive.
Some would argue even racist.
Anti-British, anti-everything, wants to drag the country down.
Why did she get away with it?
I don't know, but I don't think she should be tolerated, frankly.
It is free speech. And
it's quite offensive. Some of the things she said, quite offensive.
What's your thoughts on Shola?
I just don't know. I don't mean this to say that people can't have their views, but I generally think she just hates being here. I'm like, you don't have to be here.
Well, why doesn't she?
She doesn't seem to enjoy it here. I've never heard her say anything positive. And she also mentioned that she was like Nigerian royalty. So I'm like, if I was any sort of royalty, I'd be in the country where I'm royalty.
Well, it's a bit weird. Like, if I was in a place that I didn't enjoy and I hated so much, maybe she loves.
Yeah, she just. The thing is, I don't mind her views. She just genuinely seems really unhappy.
Why do people hate our country so much?
I don't know. I think I've seen her have a laugh.
Maybe you knew her better, but every time I've seen her or interacted, she just seems really upset.
It's them far-right thugs that went and spoilt that...
far-right thugs.
That spoilt the St George's, what was it, march, parade, by not keeping to the police cordon. Just keep in your area, please.
All the elderly pensioners going out and having a nice day.
Well, why couldn't they just keep to the police?
I'm going to... who is my Union Jackass? Dr. Shola, of course. I just don't understand why she's so divisive. She's very toxic. Some would argue she's racist. In actual fact, it can't be that much fun living your life like that, constantly angry at everyone, constantly angry at the country.
She just wants to make things a little bit better.
I don't think you do that.
Maybe she just needs a holiday.
Maybe.
She just needs some help.
Maybe she should enter GBNews big giveaway, Greek cruise, £10,000 cash, etc., etc. Good luck, Shola. Guys, thank you so much for tonight. Esther Krakow, Andrew Rosendale, Amy Nicole Turner, and thank you at home for watching as well. Really appreciate all your messages. Patrick, you'll be pleased to know, is back tomorrow with a new tan, I hope. Next up, it's Headliners. Good night.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. It'll stay dry, but it will be quite a cold night tonight. And throughout tomorrow, the best of the sunshine will be across north and western areas once again. That's because high pressure is dominating over here. Meanwhile, to the east of the UK, we've got low pressure and this weather front. That's brought cloudier skies throughout this afternoon to the southeast. That should clear away overnight, though, and we'll be left with this northerly wind. That will bring a cold feel to coastal areas through Wednesday, but also a few showers overnight tonight. They should be fairly light and mainly just restrict coastal areas. Further north and west, though, clear and dry dry and quite cold by tomorrow. We could be down as low as -3 or 4 for some Scottish glens, but the frost should be fairly patchy and should melt away fairly quickly as well. Then we'll be left with a dry and bright day for many western areas of the UK. In the east, though, with this northerly wind, that's always going to drag in a bit more in the way of cloud, and that risk of showers will continue into Wednesday afternoon. We'll feel a little bit brighter, though, than today, as the cloud will be a bit higher, and in the best of the sunshine could see highs of 15 or 16 degrees. Another cold night to come on Wednesday night, so a cold start on Thursday, and then this area of low pressure in the North Sea will bring this band of rain and cloud across northern areas of England, southern Scotland through Thursday. It should be drier and brighter in the south, but then Friday and Saturday look that much more unsettled. However, notice temperatures will start to rise by Saturday.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you could win our biggest prize yet. There's an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. Plus, courtesy of Variety Cruises, a bespoke 7-night small boat cruise for 2 worth £10,000. With flights, meals, excursions and drinks included, your next holiday could be on us. Choose any one of their 2025 Greek adventures and find your home at sea. We'll also send you packing with these luxury travel gifts. Hurry, as lines close on Friday. For another chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Britain's Newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
Is it okay to call people fat? I won't call Bev fat because she isn't. She won't call me fat because I'm not. But the fitness fanatic, Derek Evans, you might know him better as 90s icon Mr Motivator, recently told a podcast diabetes have gone through the roof. You should be able to call people fat.
Well, he joins us now. Good morning, Derek. Good morning.
Good morning.
Great to see you. So I think what you're getting at is this idea that we've become so polite about weight that we're ignoring the elephant in the room. If you'll forgive the phraseology there, and actually sometimes you've got to be cruel to be kind.
Well, actually, this has been taken out of all context. I actually didn't say you're entitled to call people fat. What I did say is that in the 80s and 90s, I remember the way I got into television, there was a gentleman walking at reception while I was waiting for the people I was training. And for some reason, I got up and I prodded him in the belly. And I said to him, you need to deal with that. That was fat. We have a nation where obesity, diabetes is killing every one of us. And unless we take responsibility for our health, rather than waiting for government to do this, government to do that, it is our responsibility, right, to look after our independence and our health. And as we get older, it's even more critical, right? And that's why I'm here as an example saying to you, listen, I'm 71 years of age, and movement is medicine. And you can't sit around watching television and not going out to the gym or wherever. You will never, ever be able to look after your family and everything you've worked for. You will lose it. I've never seen a deposit account behind a hearse. No matter what you work for, the most important thing you can do with your life is every hour, do something active. Every hour.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Good evening, I'm Ray Addison in the GB Newsroom. We start with some breaking